Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We start here with a view from our GO-16 satellite early in the morning here on Monday. You see, tomorrow, the 22nd, marks the beginning of fall. It'll be the autumnal equinox. And remember, equinox means equal night. You see, on that day, tomorrow, the sun's rays will track directly over the top of the equator, running just like this across this image. The sun will then set on the North Pole, and it won't rise again for another 6 months, and it'll rise on the South Pole, and it will stay up for the next 6 months. For us in the Carolinas, this is, of course, going to be the transition where we now have more nighttime hours than we do have daylight hours. And as we watch the sun rise this morning, it's actually what you couldn't see that I want to talk about. It's right here. You see, over the weekend, we saw the formation of Tropical Storm Alfred, and also Tropical Storm Beta. And Beta is right inside there. And our forecast this week is going to be the interplay between Beta and Hurricane Teddy, which is still sitting here, as Teddy moves north and Beta moves toward the east. So let's talk about these systems and see where they're going. Before I do that, though, I would like to show you this figure. It's what summer shaped up to look like in terms of temperature ranks. So remember, we have 128 years worth of data. And in this particular figure, you can look here at the climate district and the rank. The closer you are to the number 1, the hottest. The closer you are to 128, the coolest. Now, when we look back over the summer, we certainly know that our temperatures did not come through in any sort of steady manner. In other words, it wasn't as though it was always warm or always cool. So this particular metric is a bit misleading, but you can at least get what the numbers are going to look like as they go down onto the permanent record. From there, I would like to show you the same data, but instead look at precipitation. Now, I have some great friends and farming friends that are in the Carolinas, and they always tell me, say, Eric, we're always a week away from drought. And that was what was going on a lot this summer across the Carolinas. You see, this statistic, again, doesn't tell us that at times, between tropical systems or stalled out stationary fronts, it got very, very warm and very, very dry. But when you look back on it, summer's actually going to show up in the record books as a wet one over here in parts of the Mid-Atlantic getting down into the Carolinas. I just thought I would want to show you these statistics as we begin a new season. So our new season is going to start off quite nice, and it's going to be until Teddy here moves north and Beta moves east that we're going to start to see some problems in the Carolinas. Now, I paused this just as the sun was setting on this satellite animation last night. That's that line cutting across there. I just want to show you again, look at how much smoke is still in the central part of the United States. This is, again, coming from the fires out west, and the fires out west are continuing to go, and it doesn't look as though there's much relief in sight here for the California fires as we move forward. But let's take a look at these tropical systems and what they're going to do. Good news is last night, this satellite animation showed us some important clues onto what Beta is going to do. You see here, in the overnight hours, we lost this large convective plume, which, watch it start over again here, was right there just off the Texas coast. As the overnight hours went through and drier air was ingested by the storm, it significantly weakened it. And as a result, Tropical Storm Beta will likely stay a tropical storm as it moves toward the coast. It's right here when looking today at the flow of the atmosphere. Now, before Beta will be able to move over toward the Carolinas, this large area of higher atmospheric pressure has got to get out of the way first. And what's keeping it in place is the fact that Teddy is still moving north toward the Canadian Maritimes. The combination of which is producing very strong offshore winds, including very large waves. We even have coastal flood advisories here because of the waves beating into the coast of North Carolina. But our winds will be coming out of the northeast today as it circulates around that high. Now, at the end of the week and weekend, Beta will finally be able to move over toward the Carolinas, and we have major discrepancies on the precipitation amounts. I'll show you that in a few moments. But our week 2 pattern will be dominated by what happens with this trough here in the Gulf of Alaska. You see, we are expecting the pattern after that trough gets to the east to really become highly amplified. And that is going to change our week 2 precipitation and temperature numbers. And I'll show you those in just a few moments here. First of all, like I said, just off the coast, very windy today. Lots of very, very large waves. We are expecting wave heights to be 12 to 24 feet just off the coast. As you get out toward Bermuda in the center of Teddy, we could see some wave heights hitting 50 feet out in that area. So prepare for the rough seas just off the coast today. But it's the rainfall that we're going to be watching out for, and it's going to take a while to get here. This is from the European model forecasting all the way through Friday evening. And you can see where Beta's precipitation is going to be spreading. But I'll zoom in here and show you that we're not expecting this rainfall to get here until the very end of the week, maybe not until midday Friday or even later. So we have several clear days coming up here, and we're going to take a look at what those temperatures are going to do in just a few moments. But I want to let you know something. There are some hints that when beta gets over toward the Carolinas, we could produce some very locally heavy rainfall. I'm going to show you the ensemble view of this first by backing out and looking now at the probability of getting 2 inches of rainfall through the next 10 days. Now, of course, where beta makes landfall here in Louisiana and then cuts over toward Tennessee, we have a much higher probability in this corridor of getting over 2 inches. But the European ensemble wants to park the heaviest rainfall potential along the Appalachian Mountains and then have it become less as you go across North and South Carolina. But look at what the 0Z run from the European did. This was last night's run. You see, when only looking at day 5 through day 10 in the forecast, when beta gets over here, the model was really calling for a broad swath of maybe 2 to upwards of, 5 or 6 inches of rainfall, with possibly a corridor right here in the middle that might be very wet. We're going to have to watch this carefully. The GFS has nothing to do with it. So European, here's the GFS. You see, it wants to take more of beta's remnants and pull them farther to the north. And while it's still bringing in a corridor of heavy rainfall, the differences in the eastern part of North Carolina are staggering between our models. Now, at this point in the week, this is all the information that I have. And what I will tell you is that the chances of the remnants of beta being dragged through the Appalachian Mountains and then over toward, well, the eastern half of North Carolina, I think are relatively high. I think that the GFS has underdone the precipitation when looking again at that day 5 through 10 time period. So we'll watch it very carefully, see how things shake out when we get our next report next week. We do know this, that leading up to this, Sally already left a trail of very, very heavy rainfall. Over the last 7 days, this map shows you how much precipitation we saw across the Carolinas, with parts of North and South Carolina easily passing the 6-inch mark, partly due to what Sally brought through. So we know that we've already had a tremendous amount of rainfall in that area. Looking at that same statistic, but instead now looking at it in terms of percent of normal, that corridor right in through here has had widespread 150 to 350% of normal rainfall, where it's been very dry just on the western side of that. So keep that in mind as we look forward in this forecast. What's that done to our soil moisture? Well, we can see that when comparing the beginning of the month through at least the 19th of September, we have increased our soil moisture values over this time period, primarily due to what Sally did as it came through this corridor. I also want to point out, look over here around the Red River Valley. Look into this part of the Corn Belt. Major increases in precipitation in those two areas have also increased soil moisture and have temporarily caused some issues with getting some early harvest done, although things were quite dry last week and really helped out. But watch the main feature I wanted you to look at. Remember, it's this. As we play this forward, this is our upper level height, so troughs and ridges. You can see that throughout the week, watch that again in fact, we see that throughout the week, Teddy goes right up here toward the Canadian Maritimes, and we still have the influence of the strong northeast winds. But it won't be until, look, I can take you all the way out here to Friday midday, getting into Saturday morning, that we finally get the trough from beta to get over here. Now, why the European is pulling it in that direction is primarily because of this ridge that develops here. It just helps push beta in that direction. But this is the feature I wanted you to watch. See it right there? Going from Saturday morning to Sunday morning into Monday morning. Look at the depth of this trough that dives here into, well, central Corn Belt. By the time we get out here to middle of next week, it is really established in this area. That means we have a highly amplified pattern with a big ridge here on the west coast, a big ridge in the Atlantic, and trapped in between is not only colder air, but also the potential for producing quite a bit of heavier precipitation on its leading edge. So I better get out and show you what that looks like. First, the European ensemble matches its operational run, which is what I just showed you quite well. Look at the depth of that trough, and it is shared in the GFS model, which is over here on the left. Same flow pattern, okay? Multi-model support for this is critical, and it really is showing up here quite well. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a look here at what the operational European says. If I play this forward, I don't need to really stop it until I get here toward the end of the week, because from now until then, No precip. Look at this. We're out through Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon and evening. It won't be until Friday morning and in through midday that we get the best chances of rain coming over here from Tropical Storm Beta. But then Friday afternoon and evening, getting into Saturday morning, afternoon, and evening, that's where we really see the influence of what's left of Beta bringing in that heavier rainfall. Going from there into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and evening, you can see the wetter conditions here as the deeper trough becomes established. And then what you're going to notice is early next week, as that trough sets up, we continue to see chances of precipitation. So we have a dry week this week, Beta coming in over the weekend, and then a deeper trough developing here, which is going to increase our precipitation chances through the next 3 days starting next week. So we look out at that time period, the September 27th through October 1st time period, and with that trough developing here, the GFS says, let's keep this area wet. Same thing over here from the European. So pretty good model agreement that day 5 through day 10 time period is going to be wet. What about just looking only at week 2? Well, again, if that setup is doing something like this, we're going to hang on to our wetter bias here in the models. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the tropics in just a few moments, because at this point, I don't see them influencing your week 2 pattern, but we'll see if that stays true as we look out here into the longer term. Temperatures first, though. It is going to be a cool one today. Look at these high temperatures on Monday in the Carolinas, 60s, low 70s. It's going to be much hotter in the northern plains of the United States than it will be here in the Carolinas. Playing this forward, this is how things shape up for Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, and Thursday. So gradual warming here until we get toward the end of the week, where we have Friday and Saturday start to get some of that cloud cover coming back in with Beta, possibly limiting our temperatures from warming up too much. So at the beginning of this week, the cooler weather is left over from the cold front that came through and that northeast flow that's due to that high pressure cell sitting over the northeast, right? So this is what we're going to be getting, though, by the time we get into the end of our week. What about looking out at that 6 to 10 day time period? Gradual warming overall, but we're going to watch to see this highly amplified pattern develop a big ridge out west, because if that trough then digs in here through the Great Lakes states, well, you can see here that as we look at the 11 to 15 day, that's when our pattern becomes most amplified, and we possibly go back over to a pattern that's 3 to 6 degrees cooler than normal as we get into the first week of October. Okay, that's what I want you to be on the lookout for. What about beyond that? Let's look out here now only at the month of October. An interesting forecast is emerging here from the European model. Again, this is only for October. What we see is that the European weeklies, which were just released over the weekend, suggest that the month of October has a drier bias for much of the eastern half of the U.S. But back at the beginning of September, we released the October forecast from the seasonal model from the European. Now remember, at that time it was just saying, wow, the tropics are going to be active, and they have been. But without the influence of a tropical system cutting into the Carolinas, the chances of this October being drier are actually relatively high. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. First, since we're looking at these long-range model forecasts, are they any good? Well, let's go back over the last couple of years. You see, over here on the left, that is the October forecast for 2019 that was given to us by the European model in September of 19. And we can see that overall, it was calling for actually a pretty broad sector here to be near normal, even drier than normal. But it was a pretty big misstep by the European model, because what did happen? It was extremely wet in through this corridor and in through here, and we in the Carolinas had a wet October. So the model missed in 19. But what about in 18? Let's go back 2 years. We can see that it did a little bit better in 2018 at picking up on the pattern. Notice how it was forecasting, wet into this area. But it certainly missed the Great Lakes, as you can see here, where it was very, very wet. For us in the Carolinas, honestly, I would say it did a much better job. But still, we have to understand that long-range weather forecasting is extremely challenging. So what was different between 18, 19, and 20? I think the ocean temperatures are playing a huge role in this, especially right in here in our El Nino, La Nina area. You see, in 2018, nothing really going on there. In fact, we still had a weak El Nino going on here. What about September of 19? It was neutral. But September of 20, strong La Nina that is getting stronger. Those trade winds are not slowing down. That's what that graphic over in the bottom left says. So when I think about that, what it makes me see here is that unless the tropics bring in something that could soak the Carolinas, really we favor a wetter pattern in the northwest and drier in through here. Now, this also has a major influence on South America, where we're still waiting for the monsoonal rains to get going. That's when they'll finally get planting. Remember, after September 15th, they can plant the soybean crop in central Brazil. But their main planting time period is going to be the month of October. So we're going to watch it very, very carefully here to see if they're able to aggressively plant at the end of September, beginning of October. La Nina is certainly going to play a factor in that. All right, from there, what do we need to be paying attention to? Well, as I stated, Wilfred's sitting out here, Alpha's gone, it was over toward the Iberian Peninsula, and there's Beta and Teddy. We've talked about them. There's a 60% chance that this develops. But after that, let me show you what's going on. The MJO is over here in phase 4, 5, and 6, weekly in those phases, but it's there. And that means that through at least the next 5 days, maybe outwards of 10 days, we have some upper level suppression over the tropics, which means I don't see anything in the next week, maybe even stretching it out to 10 days, that's going to be producing a new tropical system that's going to come toward the Carolinas. But as I've been telling you and teaching you, predicting the tropics, anything beyond 4 or 5 days, is very challenging. What I see, though, is suppression in that area. Let's watch it all together. I look forward to giving you another update on Monday. Until then, have a great week. Thank you.